Mary and Alex got hitched in their early 20s, not out of burning passion, but because life threw them a curveball. When Mary found out she was expecting, the decision was made for them. The beginning wasn't easy. Alex had to drop out of college and jump straight into the grind, while Mary battled constant fatigue, waves of morning sickness, and long, sleepless nights caring for their newborn daughter. They were thrust headfirst into adulthood, forced to grow up fast, but they weren't alone. Their families stepped in to help, cushioning the blow. Alex's grandmother generously handed over an apartment, which spared them the pressure of rent and gave them a place to build their life together. Over time, they settled into a rhythm. What started as obligation slowly turned into something deeper. They became one another's anchor. Years rolled by, and just recently, they waved goodbye to their only daughter, Lucy, who headed off to university in another city. The house felt quieter, emptier. As days turned into weeks, Alex couldn't help but notice a shift in Mary. She moved through life like a ghost, her eyes dimmer, her energy fading. The silence seemed to hollow her out. Watching her sink like that was unbearable, so he took matters into his own hands and surprised her with a short trip to a wellness retreat. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was something to break the gloom and let her breathe again. They sat across from each other at dinner one night, candlelight flickering between them. Yet Mary seemed miles away. She wasn't listening to him. Her gaze kept drifting past his shoulder, and that strange little smile, tugging at the corners of her lips, didn't go unnoticed. Puzzled, Alex glanced behind him, and there it was. Or rather, there he was, a young man, barely out of his teens, working at the center. All charm and sparkling teeth, he trailed after a guest, radiating confidence. Mary's eyes were locked on him, like a cat watching a bird. Clearing his throat sharply, Alex called her name. She turned, startled, as if yanked back to reality. He didn't scold her, though he was clearly rattled. Instead, he let it slide, deciding not to stir up unnecessary drama. After all, it was just a look, wasn't it? Some time passed, and things fell back into place. Or so he thought. Then one afternoon at work, Alex's phone rang. It was Stephen, a buddy he hadn't seen in ages. They made plans to meet for a drink after work, and at first, it was just casual catching up. But before long, the tone shifted, and Stephen's questions became oddly specific. "You okay?" Alex asked, narrowing his eyes. "You seem off." Stephen scratched the back of his neck and hesitated. "I saw something today that didn't sit right, and I figured I'd better ask you before jumping to conclusions." He explained how he'd stopped by a cafe during lunch and spotted Mary sitting with a much younger man, early 20s at most. She looked jittery, glancing over her shoulder as if she were afraid someone might recognize her. Stephen, sitting far enough away, had gone unnoticed. Alex stiffened, his brow knitted together, and something inside him sank. What were they doing? Not much, honestly. Just having coffee, chatting. But she was laughing at everything he said, like he was the funniest guy on the planet. The whole vibe was weird. Alex nodded slowly, his voice dropping. "Thanks for telling me. I'll deal with it." He tried to change the subject after that, hoping to salvage what was left of the evening, but the knot in his stomach would. Later that night, once they were home, Alex decided he couldn't let it fester. He asked her, straight out, about the cafe. "Oh, Kevin?" Mary let out a light laugh, brushing off his concern. "He's Susan's boy. You remember Susan, right? We're helping raise him." Her response was so casual, so breezy that it left Alex reeling. Of course, he remembered Susan. But the idea of Mary secretly mentoring some young man behind his back, without so much as a heads up, stirred something unexpected in him. A bitter twinge of jealousy and the sting of disappointment he hadn't seen coming. Alex chose not to prolong the conflict. In the weeks that followed, Mary seemed to radiate a newfound energy. She carried herself with a lightness he hadn't seen in years, smiling to herself, humming softly around the house, and rarely leaving her phone out of sight. Though he tried to quiet his thoughts, the story about the young man, supposedly Susan's son, kept echoing in his mind. One day, worn down by doubt and searching for clarity, Alex took a long walk home instead of his usual commute. The fresh air did little to soothe him. Something felt off, and that uneasy feeling lingered like a shadow. As he rounded a corner near their building, someone called out his name. He turned and was momentarily puzzled by the woman who approached, familiar, yet not instantly recognizable. Then he placed her. She bore a striking resemblance to Susan, Mary's friend. They exchanged small talk politely. Alex, careful not to show his hand, asked casually, "So how's your son doing? Kevin, right? Is he working now?" Susan smiled, seemingly pleased by the interest. "Yes, doing great in school. Almost done with college. It's gone by so fast." Alex's heart sank. That didn't align with the man Stephen had seen at the cafe. The one Mary had laughed with so freely was clearly not a student anymore. Pushing forward, he asked, "And when did you last see Mary?" "Oh, it's been a while, actually. Maybe last year," she said, with surprise. "Why?" "No reason," Alex replied, forcing a tight-lipped smile. "Just curious." He wrapped up the conversation quickly and walked away, his suspicions hardening into something closer to certainty. Mary had lied. She had used Susan's name and her non-existent proximity as a cover. The young man at the leisure center, the mysterious phone calls, the evasiveness. It all aligned now. The truth, as bitter as it was, had finally revealed itself. That evening, Alex returned home with urgency, his thoughts churning. He had opted to walk again, needing time to collect himself, though he regretted it now. He was running late and hoped Mary was still home. As he entered the building and approached the elevator, he caught a movement in the stairwell from the corner of his eye, someone descending swiftly from the floor above. The elevator stopped on their floor. When the doors opened, Alex stepped out and immediately spotted Mary, standing in front of their apartment door, visibly startled. He didn't enter. Instead, he fixed his gaze on her and asked coldly, "Is there something you want to tell me?" "Darling, please don't raise your voice," Mary said softly, stepping aside as if to invite him in. Alex sneered. "You're not even going to greet me? That's not like you." Then, unexpectedly, a voice came from above. "That's him?" it asked, laced with irritation. Alex looked up to see a young man standing on the stairs. The very image of the one from the leisure center. Confident, bold, and far too familiar. "I told you to leave," Mary muttered to the man, visibly shaken now. Alex's voice sharpened with rage. "Is this your lover? How touching. You weren't expecting me, were you?" "Stop bothering her," the young man shot back, defiantly. That was the final straw. Without hesitation, Alex stormed up the stairs and landed a hard punch across the man's face, sending him stumbling. Mary cried out and ran forward, trying to separate them. Alex stood over him, breathing heavily. "Before you throw insults, learn whose apartment you're standing in," he snapped. "Take your little fling and your lies, and don't even think about coming back." Turning to Mary, his voice lowered into something almost venomous. "How are you going to explain this, Mary? Or do you even care anymore?" Once inside the apartment, Alex shut the door firmly behind him. Silence fell, heavy and absolute, until Mary began knocking, her voice pleading through the wood, asking him to open up so they could talk. He stood still for a moment, then moved without a word. Methodically, he gathered her belongings, packed them into bags, and pushed them out the door without meeting her eyes. He didn't say much. There was nothing left to say. A faint sense of relief flickered through him. At least their daughter hadn't witnessed the unraveling. She was away in another city, far from the emotional wreckage of her parents' lives. Alex didn't tell her about the divorce until he held the certificate in his hands. When she arrived that weekend for a routine visit, expecting warmth and normalcy, he broke the news. She stared at him in disbelief, stunned into silence. The revelation struck so deeply that she couldn't bring herself to call her mother for weeks. Meanwhile, whispers began to spread. Mary had moved in with the young man. But the reality was less romantic than the rumors made it seem. The apartment, once claimed as his, had only ever been borrowed. He had lived there with friends, spinning illusions and living day to day on scraps of charm and borrowed time. Mary, caught in a moment of passion and disillusionment, had chosen to follow her heart, only to find herself footing the bills and carrying the weight of a relationship that was never built to last. The young man was still a student, scraping by on a part-time job and the goodwill of others. He was never ready to share a life, only to be briefly adored. Eventually, the truth became unavoidable. Mary ended it, realizing too late that she had traded the familiar for a fleeting fantasy. She couldn't go back. Alex had closed that door for good. And now the future stretched out before her, like a quiet, uncertain road. Alone, she tried to rebuild, but no matter how much she tried to move forward, the silence from her daughter lingered, like a bruise. Reconnecting with her, let alone with grandchildren she might never meet, seemed like a distant hope, a life she had lost the moment she walked away.